The young lady we interviewed today is the person in charge of the entire Zhang family. I heard that she went blind 5 years ago and was even expelled from the Zhang family. If it hadn't been for her fiancé who stayed by her side and took care of her without abandon, she might have been gone long ago. Shh, keep your voice down. I sat there, barely maintaining a smile, while my fingernails dug deep into my palms. Suddenly, my senior colleague, Brother Wang, who was leading me, turned around and said, "Xiao Tang, go and get me a glass of water to moisten my throat." Just as I reached the water dispenser by the door, the main door was suddenly pushed open. She didn't stop for a moment. Surrounded by several bodyguards, she walked onto the stage. When she passed by me, I froze in place. After a few seconds delay, I suddenly came to my senses. The 2 years I spent by her side were precisely the most down-and-out period of Susan's life. She was kicked out of the Zhu family, and her eyes went blind due to a car accident. Of course, she had no idea what I looked like. Well, that's probably for the best. When I went back with a glass of water, the interview had already started. Susan sat on the stage, calmly looking at the entire audience. She was answering those business-related questions. "I heard that during your illness, you were really fortunate to have Mr. Xiu by your side who never left you. Are the two of you about to get married soon?" Yes, Joseph has really done a lot for me. I truly deserve his special favor. Her graceful and generous attitude won the admiration of many people. Instead, someone asked, "Could you please share the story of how you and Mr. supported each other when you were at a low point?" The smile on Joseph's lips suddenly froze. "After she fell from grace, some people deliberately came to cause trouble. In order to protect her, I was pushed down the stairs and fell. Covered in blood, those people were scared and pushed each other as they ran away. I gritted my teeth and stood up, pretending that nothing had happened, and walked back to her side, saying, let's go home." But Susan suddenly grabbed my hand and said, "You're injured. We're going to the hospital." "I'm not. I can smell the blood." Her voice suddenly rose, and tears rolled down from her misty eyes. But when she opened her mouth, she called out my brother's name, "Joseph. When I recover, I'll give you the grandest wedding in the world." After the interview ended, the sky grew overcast. Outside the venue, there was a fine curtain of rain. Brother Wang touched his pocket and then started to press the elevator button to go to the first floor. The next second, the elevator door opened. It bumped right into the two people inside. Joseph was slightly tilting his head, chatting with Susan about trivial topics related to filming on the set. Although she had an indifferent expression, she listened to him very patiently. Their posture was quite intimate. When he saw me, Joseph's expression immediately turned extremely ugly. "Sorry." I mumbled an apology, turned around, and was about to take the stairs, but Susan spoke behind me. "Stop." I froze in place. Susan finally retracted her gaze and said, "Let's go." I stood alone in the ascending elevator, lost in a daze. After my parents' divorce, my father took Joseph and ingratiated himself with the Zhu family, becoming their in-laws. Until that day, I went to the cemetery to visit my mother and came back a bit late. She started venting her bad temper again. "Joseph, stop acting in front of me. Don't think I don't know that you actually dislike me in your heart. You're just afraid of what others will say. That's why." She didn't get to finish her words, because I suddenly lowered my head and kissed her. It was actually my first kiss. There was no skill involved, and because I was a bit angry, it was more like a wild animal's bite. But Susan suddenly fell silent. Even the tips of her ears turned bright red. I went downstairs with the memory card to find Brother Wang. He was very satisfied and said, "Xiao Tang, you're quite diligent. Coincidentally, there's a dinner party tonight. I'll take you there to meet some people. As a journalist, connections are very important." I quickly thanked him. However, when we arrived, I saw a familiar black Rolls Royce in the parking lot and immediately froze. "Is Mr. Zhu and the others also here tonight?" Brother Wang turned around and winked at me. saying, "The dinner party I'm taking you to is the one with Mr. Zhu Xiaotang. Don't underestimate your brother Wang's connections." It was too late to regret now. I could only muster up the courage and go in with him. Fortunately, the private room was very large. As a small-time journalist like me, I wasn't at the same table as Susan and the others at all. Brother Wang introduced me to many senior industry figures. "This is a new recruit in our company this year, yes? A very smart young man named David Zhao Kang. Come and say hello to everyone." As a newbie, I inevitably had to propose a toast. By the end, I was dizzy. I only managed to say sorry before covering my mouth and rushing to the restroom. I vomited my guts out. I rinsed my mouth, splashed some cold water on my face, and walked out. The corridor was dimly lit. In the dark corner by the window stood a familiar figure. I felt my heart skip a beat and tried to pretend I didn't notice and just pass by. Thinking of Brother Wang's loud voice, my face suddenly felt a bit hot. "Sorry. My senior treats us newbies very well. Maybe he's a bit too enthusiastic if it has disturbed Mr. Zhu's good mood. I apologize to you." I organized my words to explain, fearing that I might implicate Brother Wang, and also apologize to her, but Susan didn't say anything again. Under the warm yellow light, she slightly narrowed her eyes and looked at me with a half smile. "Does it seem to you, Reporter Tang, that I'm a very petty person?" I lowered my head and mumbled, "That's not what I meant." The next second, a gold embossed business card was handed to me. "You're still in your probationary period, right? There's a job opportunity. Do you want to give it a try?" When I went back, my head was still a bit dizzy. As soon as I entered the door, Brother Wang grabbed me undasked. "Are you okay, Xiao Tang?" I rubbed my aching stomach and said in a low voice, "Sorry, Brother Wang. I had a stomach operation before, so I can't drink much." He frowned and was about to say something. His gaze swept downward and landed on the gold embossed business card in my hand. He widened his eyes in disbelief and said, "Is that Mr. Zhu's personal business card?" I nodded, remembering the scene just now. That was a business card that was said to be extremely hard to obtain and could be used to directly contact her. "I don't accept benefits without doing anything." I raised my eyes warily and didn't forget to disguise my voice. Why would Mr. Zhu give such a precious opportunity to an unknown little journalist like me? She slightly curled the corner of her lips and said, "Probably. I just find you more to my liking." That was indeed a very Susan-like reason. During the 2 years I took care of her later on, I gradually got to know Susan better. She would show some unruly little tempers in front of me. For example, at certain moments, I gritted my teeth and swallowed the soft sounds, grabbing her hair. "You can't see, so don't move around." In the dim light, the young girl slightly raised her head. The soft broken hair on her forehead fluttered across her out-of-focus eyes. She licked her lips, and her fingers pressed against my neck, exerting a bit of force. She said softly, "Other parts are fine, so you need to speak louder." "Let me hear you." I came back to my senses and made up a random excuse to deal with Brother Wang. Next day when I went back to the company, the leader called me over. He said kindly, "Xiaotang, you should prepare for that popular emotional live-streaming variety show that's currently in vogue. I'll participate in the recording as a special guest observer." But after I started working, the ones to be interviewed in the next episode of the show were Joseph and Susan. After that interview meeting that day, the news of their engagement was high profile, lie on the trending list as a press show promotion. The fans in the comments section went crazy. They walked through the tough times together, and now they meet at the peak. What a beautiful love story. It's said that the Zhu family's company was on the verge of collapse, but it managed to rise again, relying on the strong support of the Zhu group. Powerful couple. If you don't ship them, you're not human. I quickly skimmed through the comments and then closed the comments section. The host, Nancy, was confirming the script while chatting with me. If we can dig out the specific story of Mr. Zhu and her fiancé during those 2 years, the show's effect will definitely be great. I gripped the pen in my hand tightly and softly agreed. I knew every detail of what happened during those 2 years better than anyone else. But I couldn't say anything, relying on the Zhu family's resources and connections. Joseph is now a popular A-list male celebrity. At the beginning of the show, the large streaming room was filled with millions of viewers. Under the spotlight, I heard Nancy say, "I heard that Mr. Zhu and Joseph are already talking about getting married. Could you please share your mental journey as a couple?" Joseph turned his head to look at her and smiled faintly. I've never believed those slanderous words that were spread about her in my eyes. Wing Xin has always been the person I love the most. He stared at her affectionately, his eyes so tender that they seemed to be brimming with love. But Susan lowered her eyelashes and smiled. "You're lying. Do you remember how you disliked me when I just went blind?" Joseph was taken aback. His gaze turned towards me, and a hint of hostility flashed in his eyes. "Hey." But, in front of the camera, he could only force a smile and say, "I don't really remember, probably because our relationship has gotten better and better. I only remember the sweet parts of our love." I glanced at the real-time bullet comments behind me. Comments like, "So sweet," filled the entire screen. I put down the script, gripped the microphone tightly, and asked Susan a question. "It seems that the two of you have some differences in your views. Is there some hidden story? How about sharing how you end with each other?" I originally thought that she wouldn't say anything, but after a moment of silence, Susan still spoke up. "When my eyes first had problems, I was very depressed. I resented the whole world and didn't like him either. He left early and came back late every day. And he still had to take care of me during his spare time one day. He was so busy that he was all over the place. He was cooking fish in the pot, and when he went downstairs to buy salt, he forgot to turn off the stove. When he came back, the kitchen was already on fire. My throat felt as if it was blocked by something. In a daze, I seemed to feel that evening again. The high temperature from the fire still lingered in the air. I dragged Susan out of the room. I grabbed her collar and asked fiercely, "Do you want to die?" My whole body and my voice were trembling. She didn't quarrel with me as sharply as before. Instead, after a long silence, she asked me in a hoarse voice, "Isn't it better if I'm dead? Isn't it also a relief for you?" It was probably at that moment I suddenly realized. Once the haughty young lady of the Zhu family, she is now nothing more than a decadent kitten bluffing others. So, out of breath, I pushed her into the room. The walls lit by the flames were pitch black. I unbuttoned her clothes one by one and whispered, "I didn't have dinner. You should make up for it." She seemed to realize something. "Are you sure?" The rest of her words were silenced by my forceful kiss. "Susan, I don't think you're a burden." At night, it felt as if the whole world had turned upside down, and only we were left. But now, she brought up the past again. Sitting beside her was her intimate fiancé, Joseph. The whole world thought that those memories belonged solely to the two of them. A suffocating bitterness welled up in my heart. At such a close distance, certain familiar, yet strange aura emanating from Susan quietly enveloped me. It was overwhelming, yet it no longer belonged to me. She paused for a moment, and amidst the applause of the live audience, she finally said, "I will always remember the moonlight that night. It was so bright that it could illuminate everything. I couldn't see, but I listened to him talk all night long." I clenched the pen in my hand and quickly lowered my head. My eyes ached, because I modified the questions on the spot. I brought up many things that no one knew before. This interview was a great success. By the end of the show, the number of viewers in the live streaming room had exceeded 10 million. For the first time, the details of the untold and secret past of the person in charge of the Zhu family were revealed. Everyone seemed very excited. Backstage, Nancy patted me on the shoulder and said, "You really are a good journalist. Those questions you changed on the spot were so sharp that people couldn't help but answer them." Just then, when I turned around, I saw Susan and Joseph walking over. Nancy suddenly fell silent. Susan cast a cold glance at me and asked, "Did you prepare today's questions?" I nodded. Joseph said with hidden hostility, "Reporter Tang, you're really good at hitting people sore spots. But I have to remind you to abide by basic professional ethics. Don't take of it. What you don't deserve." I didn't say anything. I just looked at Susan again. With a sharp expression, she simply said, "Reporter Tang has great abilities from now on. You will continue to handle the media business for our company." Joseph suddenly looked at me, his eyes full of fear and hatred. He stopped me in a deserted corner, his eyes wary and full of disgust. "David, you're really insatiable. You clearly took money from me before. What are you doing back here now?" I looked at him calmly and said, "Hey, you've graduated and come back to work." It was a very ordinary sentence. "Work? David, do you think I'm stupid?" He suddenly roared at me like a madman. "Get out of here. Just tell them you voluntarily gave up the work connection, or you won't have a good day." I ignored him and turned to leave. Joseph kept his word. I suddenly started to encounter difficulties everywhere. Several work opportunities that should have belonged to me were replaced by others at the last minute. One evening, just before getting off work, the leader suddenly called me into his office. "There's a very important annual development conference next month. I'll be the host." I was slightly stunned for a moment and then heard him say, "Ms. Zhu specifically requested you to be the host. After work, by the roadside opposite the company, there was actually a very familiar Rolls-Royce parked. The car window rolled down, revealing Susan's indifferent face. Since reporter Tang is so curious about my past, why don't you just ask me directly?" I lowered my head and said, "I have no intention of prying into Ms. Zhu. As privacy it's just for work. Even if it's for work, I gave you my personal business card, and you could have contacted me to ask." I pursed my lips. There's no need for that, because at that moment, I suddenly realized that it had been 3 years she was now Miss Zhu. The powerful person in charge of the Zhu family. She was no longer that hot-tempered girl who, after being scolded, would pitifully pester me for a kiss and comfort like a kitten. The Zhu family had declined. Without Susan's acquiescence and indulgence, Joseph would never have dared to target me so openly. Perhaps for her, that past was actually a disgrace that she didn't want to be reminded of. I was about to leave, but Susan stopped me. "Stop." She pushed open the car door, stepped out, and blocked my way. "Mr. Tang, can we have a chat?" I asked in a hoarse voice. "What does Miss Zhu want to talk about?" Susan curled the corner of her lips. There was a hint of helplessness in her gaze as she looked at me. "Talking about work, is that okay?" In the next half month, Susan came to see me twice more. We checked several important decisions that were to be announced at the conference. Finally, she suddenly remembered something. She handed me a document. "This large-scale tourism project, which hasn't been announced yet, is a direct cooperation with the provincial government. You can announce it at the conference as an exclusive scoop even covered." I was silent for a moment, then took it and said thank you. Brother Wang knew about this and kept persuading me. "It seems that Ms. Zhu really appreciates you. Why don't you subtly mention to her the fact that Joseph has been suppressing you?" I was revising the hosting script and smiled. No need. Do you think she would make things difficult for her own fiancé for the sake of a strange journalist? On the day of the conference, the venue was packed. The seat in the middle, which was supposed to be occupied by Susan, was now empty. Amidst the flashing of countless spotlights, I was announcing several important future cooperations of the Zhu Group. Suddenly, a strange journalist stood up and loudly accused me. "Where did you steal this top-secret information from?" I turned cold. My cooperation with the Zhu Group is through completely legitimate official channels. Legitimate. A person like you who climbs up through unspoken rules doesn't deserve to fear such things. He shouted loudly. "I have evidence." Someone walked onto the stage. It was Joseph. He stared at me and softly sighed. David, it's normal for a small journalist like you to be attracted to Ling Xin. I originally wanted to save you some face, but you really don't know when to give up. The large screen behind him suddenly switched from the PPD to several explicit photos. And the person in the photos was me. You sent him these photos. You went to knock on his hotel room door in the middle of the night, wearing only a bath towel. And there's also the surveillance footage of you checking into a hotel with your leader. As she spoke, the large screen behind her changed again. At the entrance of a dimly lit hotel, my leader and I walked in side by side. You're a habitual offender. Amidst the uproar in the audience, the main door of the hall suddenly opened. Susan strode in, her sharp gaze sweeping across the whole room. It also passed over my face without the slightest pause. My heart suddenly sank. The stage spotlight shone on me, as if it were a public punishment under the gaze of everyone. For a moment, there was a lot of whispering in the audience. Doing such things makes him a disgrace to our journalists. He's so despicable. It's really disgusting. He has no professional ethics at all. He should be banned. I didn't look at anyone. I just stared fixedly at Susan. Watched as she looked at Joseph and said coldly, "What did you just say?" Joseph said, "Ling Xin. You've been deceived by him. He deliberately pretended to be an exclusive interview journalist to get close to you, just to steal confidential information from you and harm the entire Zoo group. Even his opportunity to host the conference independently was obtained through unspoken rules." Susan was silent for a moment and then looked at me. "Do you have anything to say?" What did I have to say? In Joseph's gaze, I felt his hatred and satisfaction. I suddenly felt it was incredibly absurd he and I were only 2 years apart in age. We were full brothers, born of the same parents. After our mother passed away, he and I should have been the only closest people left in this world. I sneered mockingly. I clenched the microphone and said, "I want to say, Ms. Sue, your fiancé is talking nonsense and deliberately spreading rumors. It's because you love him. You're going to watch him distort the truth and fabricate facts. I will also write this truthfully in the news report of today's conference. The public has eyes. Projects developed by a decision maker who can't distinguish right from wrong like this are probably not trustworthy either. Whether it was the unruly young lady in the past or the decisive person in charge in the current rumors. Upon hearing such an open threat, they should have been angry. But she just walked onto the stage step by step under the lights. Standing at the same height, she faced me from a distance. She called my name in a very soft voice, "David." My heart was filled with an unexpected surge of bitterness. I didn't want to hear her defend Joseph anymore. I turned my head aside and said word by word, "All the accusations against me are baseless rumors. I only have work-related communication with Ms. Zhu, the fiancée of Mr. Zhu. There's no private contact at all." "No contact?" My words were suddenly interrupted by Susan's voice. "You gave me a ring, but you don't plan to take responsibility for me." I was stunned and suddenly turned to look at her. She raised her left hand, revealing the extremely simple silver ring on her left ring finger. It was made of inexpensive material, and the craftsmanship was average, but due to the careful care of its owner, it reflected a brilliant luster under the lights. This ring seemed to instantly pull me back into the memories of 4 years ago. That day was originally Susan's 19th birthday. In the first 18 years of her life, every birthday was extremely luxurious and lively. Only this time, she was so down and out that only I was with her to make her happy. I took on a part-time job for 2 days during the breaks from revising my thesis. With the more than 200 yuan I earned, I bought a pair of inexpensive couple rings when I got back. I grabbed her hand and put the ring on her. Susan couldn't see, but she could feel it. Her ears turned red, and she still stubbornly asked me, "What is this?" I teased her. There was a couple arguing by the roadside and throwing things. I squatted there and waited for a long time. "This is the ring I picked up, Miss Sue," Don't dislike it. Don't call me that. She carefully held the cheap silver ring in her arms. I like it even if it's picked up because it was given to me by you. She kept her word in the days that followed. She always wore that ring and never took it off. Coming back to reality from the memories, Susan was approaching me step by step. Say something, David. There's nothing to say, I said in a low voice. Ms. Zhu has mistaken someone isn't. This ring the token of love, given to you by your fiend, Mr. Zhu. She sneered. I never said how I got this ring. How do you know so much about it? As she spoke, she had already stopped right in front of me at such a close distance. There was no way to avoid it. There was a lot of whispering in the audience. What does that mean, Ms.? Sue is saying that the person who accompanied her through the tough times was actually that little journalist? What about Joseph, then? You know, they do look quite alike. Joseph looked at me with hatred in his eyes, but he had to soften his tone and coax Susan. Ling Xin, don't be deceived by him. This person has always been full of lies and has a history of it. I closed my eyes and suppressed all the surging emotions in my heart. When I opened my eyes again, I was able to look at her calmly. Yes, I gave it to you at that time. For the sake of money, I pretended to be Joseph and deceived you for 2 years later. I took the money and left. I've already forgotten what happened back then. Every time, you could recognize me at a glance. Does that still count? My eyelashes trembled violently. I lowered my eyes and hid all my emotions in my voice, burying them deep in my throat. I gently her fingers and pulled out my hand. When I looked up again, my expression was indifferent. I've forgotten. I lied. In fact, during the years I studied abroad, I often thought of Susan in the winter of her 19th year, when she was about to return to the Zhu family. It was the peak of our passionate love. The winter in the northern city was extremely dry when we kissed. The static electricity would sting slightly. I had thought about confessing my identity to her. There were many moments when our love was at its height. She would kiss my ear and call me in a hoarse voice, Joseph. Joseph, don't leave me. It was like a bucket of cold water suddenly being poured over my head at that moment. I suddenly realized that from the very beginning, I had come to her side with an unspeakable purpose, pretending to be someone else. Susan once told me, when I was a child, my cousin ricked me into a closet and locked the door. I almost died in there. I hate being deceived by others the most in my life. If she knew the truth, would she hate me to the bone? On the eve of Susan's 20th birthday, the old master of the Zhu family fell seriously ill and accidentally learned the truth of what happened back then. Susan had been deliberately framed from the start, and even the car accident had been arranged. He sent someone to contact Joseph and wanted to take Susan back. Joseph came to me. He was already a famous male celebrity. He raised his chin and looked at me arrogantly. Now the Zhu family wants to recognize her again. You, not still dreaming of rising to a high position, are you? Stop dreaming. Whether it's the Zhu family or Susan, they only recognize me. Joseph, from the very beginning, you were just a fake. He took out a check from his bag and threw it at me. Here's another 500,000 yuan. Stop having unrealistic dreams, otherwise I'll tell everything about what happened back then. I suddenly raised my head and stared at him. Joseph, Mom is your mom too. My mom is the young lady of the Zhu family. What is she? Just a prostitute, he sneered. I lost my temper, grabbed Joseph's collar, and punched him twice fiercely. Hearing the commotion, someone rushed in from outside, twisted my arm, and pinned me to the ground. The big star stood in front of me, looking down at me. Am I wrong? Take the money and go abroad obediently. Don. Show up and be an eyesore again, otherwise I'll have someone carve those shameful things about her from back then on her tombstone. He left. I stared at the check that fluttered to the ground. I thought of 2 years ago. Because my mom was sick, Our family had borrowed a lot of money. After she passed away, I couldn't even afford a decent tombstone for her. Just then, Joseph contacted me. Thought money? He didn't even finish listening to me before he sneered. She only raised me for a few days. She's dead. So why should I give you money for her? I thought he was resentful and wanted to explain. She wanted to keep your custody back then. It was you who cried and wanted to go with Dad. Of course I wanted to go with Dad to the Zhu family. Do you think I'm as stupid as you? Joseph interrupted me with a cold face. What? Do you still want to keep me here and live a poor life like yours, where you can't even afford a tombstone when you die? I looked at Joseph in front of me, all the words stuck in my throat, and I couldn't utter a single word. His face, which was 6 or 7 points similar to mine, was full of impatience and disgust. The high-end customized suit on him, the diamond cufflinks on his sleeves. Any one of them was worth an astronomical amount that I couldn't even imagine. He picked up the coffee on the table and took a slow sip. Finally, he revealed his intention. However, for the sake of us being brothers, if you want money, I'm not unwilling to give it to you. 50,000 on you disguise yourself as me and take care of someone for me. The originally planned conference had turned into a farce, as he saw the people around looking at him more and more strangely. Some even turned their microphones and cameras towards Susan. Mr. Zhu is what Ms. Su just said true? Or was the person who accompanied her when she was down and out really not you, but that reporter Tend? Are all the accusations you made just now false rumors? Unable to argue, he could only look at Susan for help. Ling Xian, you know me best. I've been with you for so many years, how could I do such a thing? Susan looked down at him and smiled. Don't be afraid. Aren't you so sure of your evidence? The lawyer has already arrived, and everything today will be truthfully recorded and evidence will be collected. Her voice was gentle and pleasant, as if to soothe, but Joseph was like seeing a terrifying monster, and he suddenly started shaking all over. The conference couldn't go on. I gathered my hosting script and turned to go off the stage. Susan silently followed behind me. It's raining outside, let me give you a ride. The rain poured down like someone was splashing water. I thought for 3 seconds and decided not to make myself uncomfortable. When I got into Susan's Rolls Royce, I turned to look and saw a hint of hidden joy in her eyes. However, when I took out my phone, I found that what happened at the conference had been live-streamed and was trending on the under several topics. Netizens were arguing fiercely. So, Joseph took the credit that belonged to the little journalist? How can he be so shameless? What do you mean by taking credit? For a man who climbed up through unspoken rules, who knows which one of them is lying? I've verified that those explicit photos were photoshopped. Even if it was really him, he was just doing a job for money from the start. The job was done, and he took the money. What is there for him to feel wronged about? Am I the only one who thinks Susan is so pitiful? Neither of the two men is any good. They both deceived her. Something suddenly seemed to stick in my throat. Kate quickly turned off my phone and looked away. The rain was like tiny rivers running across the car window, blending the whites that were rapidly receding outside into a jumbled mass of colorful patches. Compared to 3 years ago, the scenery of this city hadn't changed at all, but between Susan and me, everything had completely changed. At that time, the Zhu family invited the most renowned experts after 2 surgeries. Susan could finally see the light again. The bodyguards hired by Joseph at a high price guarded near me every hour, strictly preventing me from seeing Susan and telling the truth. However, on the day she regained her sight, those people took me to the hospital on their own initiative. Through the door of the hospital room, I couldn't see Susan, but I could hear her insecure voice. Joseph. Ling Xian, I'm here. Joseph said in a low voice. I'm really worried about you. His voice, deliberately changed, was almost identical to mine. Susan didn't notice anything strange. She just said unhappily, you said that when I got my eyesight back, you'd be the first person I see. You broke your promise. I didn't listen to the rest. A sudden intense pain welled up in my heart. almost engulfing me from the beginning. In Susan's world, the person who accompanied her through those 2 years was Joseph. Not me, not David. Joseph's bodyguards dragged me into a nearby lounge soon. He walked in, looking as arrogant as ever. With only a small wound on his lip that was still bleeding. It was Susan who kissed me. She really loves me and can't live without me. He said slowly to me, "You took good care of her these 2 years, but for her, I'm the one who did all of this. A person of your low status can never, ever have any connection with her. Where are you going?" "Home?" Susan's voice suddenly interrupted my memories. I slightly lowered my head. "Could you please take me to the company, Mizu? I still have some work to deal with." And instead of starting the car, she leaned over with one hand on the steering wheel, looking somewhat sad. "Yuan, do you really have to call me so formally?" At such a close distance, her familiar scent, mixed with the fresh smell of rain, surrounded me, almost dragging me back into countless memories of the past at this moment. I suddenly didn't want to hold back anymore. I pushed her away and looked at her coldly. "Then what should I call you? Miss Sue? Or Susan? Do you want me to be like 3 years ago when I got injured protecting you, and you called out Joseph's name to me?" She suddenly fell silent. "Those 2 years are over. The person you have a marriage contract with has always been Joseph. Your life is back on track. Why are you still pestering me? But this isn't my right track." Susan looked at me, her eyes gradually turning red. I had never met Joseph before from the very beginning. The person I recognized was only a dense pain welled up in my heart. I closed my eyes, and when I opened my mouth, my voice couldn't stop trembling. "You're still lying to me, Susan. On the day you regained your sight, I was outside the hospital room. I heard you treat Joseph as me without any doubt." "You hadn't kissed him," she suddenly interrupted me. "I didn't. The moment I opened my eyes, I knew he wasn't you." I was suddenly stunned. I heard Susan's seemingly calm voice. "The situation in the Zhu family is very complicated. In that hospital room that day, there was more than one person with evil intentions who wanted to kill me. So the moment I realized he wasn't you, I made a decision. Joseph was the best and most perfect target. He likes to pretend to be someone else. So let him do it to the fullest." Some images from news reports suddenly flashed through my mind, which I saw when I was studying abroad. It said that Joseph encountered a real explosion while filming and almost died in the fire. It also said that when he was traveling with Susan, he was hit by a huge billboard and was almost in danger of losing his life. I didn't mean to not recognize you. A lot has happened in these 3 years after my grandfather passed away, one after another. People from the Zhu family jumped out and tried to kill me, but now they're either in prison or dead among them. It even includes my biological mother. Actually, I'm not afraid of death. When my cousin was forced to give up all his shares and stabbed me in a fit of madness, I didn't feel the pain. At that moment, I just missed you so much. The parking lot was quiet all around. Under the dim car lights, she took off her suit, revealing the scar near her heart on her chest. "The Zhu family is so chaotic. Why? It's not so easy to get, but it doesn't matter after today. Joseph and the last remaining forces that support him should also fall. The entire Zhu family, including me, can be yours." She leaned closer bit by bit and stared at me from a very close distance. Her eyes, which used to be always out of focus and grayish, now were as bright as the stars that held the whole universe. I swallowed and said in a low voice, "But you and Joseph." "I've never kissed him." "Never," she said, slightly emphasizing her tone. "In my life, I've only kissed you." With just these words, a string of reason in my mind completely snapped when I pounced on her and opened her collar. Countless passionate memories of the past rushed to my mind. Her lowest point was also the 2 most uncertain and confused years of my life. Those emotions that rushed around with nowhere to vent finally turned into our intense entanglement. By the time everything calmed down, it was already late at night. Susan drove the car in front of a villa. I took out my phone and saw the news on with a bright red trending label. Joseph taken away for investigation. Last month, my half-brother contacted him and threatened him with knowing his secret, asking him to steal the tender documents and other confidential files from me. I was silent for a moment and then said softly, "I know, you know." Susan suddenly turned her head. "Did you arrange this, Ewan?" I nodded, pinching my palm and forcing myself to look at her. "I came back this time to destroy the Zhu family, to destroy Joseph, and to reverse the case that the Zhu family fabricated about my mother 20 years ago. For this result, I'm willing to pay any price. This was the most important reason why I was engaged in media work 20 years ago. Because the young Miss Zhu of the Zhu family took a fancy to my father, she set up a trap to frame my mother, saying that she was engaged in prostitution and the young Joseph, in order to live the life of a young master, actually helped the outsiders and pushed his own mother into the abyss with his own hands. My mother was detained for 15 days and lost her job after she came home. All the neighbors pointed at her and stood up for my father after my parents divorced. My mother, carrying that shameful reputation, took me on return to the countryside. In Athari states he was depressed and passed away due to illness just after she turned 50, and on the day she died, the TV in the hospital was reporting news about the Zhu family. They said that the Zhu family couple loved each other, and their children were excellent, and they were a model even among the wealthy families. How ridiculous. When my mother died, she weighed less than 70 pounds. There were green and purple needle marks on her hands. She could have lived a long life. A Zhu family's business isn't clean either. They've hurt so many people. Do they deserve to be called a model? I covered my eyes and forced back the surging tears. Susan, I used you because I knew you wouldn't let go of those who betrayed you, so I let him deliberately break your taboo. You can feel hurt and hate me for this, but I must send him to hell with my own hands. I suppressed all my emotions and tried to look at her as calmly as possible. But, Ewan, your hand is shaking. Susan grabbed the hand that I had behind my back, carefully brought it to her lips, and kissed it. Don't be afraid. I'm more than happy that you used me. It proves that you have me in your heart. I will definitely stand by your side. I said that the entire Zhu family, including me, is yours. The matter of Joseph being taken away for investigation made a big stir on the 3 days. The Zhu family tried to suppress the public opinion, so they came to Susan for help. She sat behind the desk, listened to their request, and smiled. What you said is very touching, but how to decide this matter? Sorry, it has to be up to my fiancé. My father, with his wealthy wife, turned around and saw me. His face immediately changed. I smiled at them. You two should prepare as soon as possible because soon you'll be just like him. Susan held a press conference to clarify the relationship between her and Joseph. Facing the questions, she had a half smile. Dang, I've never admitted that it's him. The one I've been talking about has always been the one who accompanied and took care of me back then. Someone asked, "Wait, didn't I take Joseph's money to take care of you?" There was still a smile on Susan's lips, but her eyes turned cold inch by inch. I advise you, this journalist, to be careful with your words. There are so many rich people in the world. Why did he only take money to take care of me? Isn't it because he loves me? The journalist fell silent. I, sitting next to her, also fell silent after this press conference. I released those recordings of when he came to me back then. A blind person, and also an outcast of a wealthy family who would want to take care of her. Oh, she only raised me for a few days. She's dead, so why should I give her money? Do you still want to keep me here and live a poor life like yours, where you can't even afford a tombstone when you die? Public opinion was in an uproar. I took advantage of this overwhelming public opinion and started a live stream in front of millions of people. I told the truth of what happened 20 years ago. Miss Zhu Jing of the Zhu family took a fancy to my father. They didn't want to make things clear and just got divorced instead. They joined hands to set up a trap to frame my mother, making her bear that embarrassing reputation and live a shameful life. Behind me stood a timid man with a crew cut during my postgraduate study and internship. I inquired everywhere and spent a lot of effort to find this person's whereabouts from a senior sister in the same field. He had the habit of petty theft and had been in prison a few times. Back then, that matter was instigated by Zhu Jing. That Stang was indeed innocent. She was tricked by her own son to a drinking party of the Zhu family. She drank too much, and I helped her to the room and put a stack of money under the pillow. Zhu Jing had someone call the police in advance before my mother, who was deliberately drunk, woke up. The door was pushed open by the police, who came for an anti-prostitution raid. Even now, it's still easy to frame a woman, spread rumors about her, and label her as a slut. What asks more? It was in that era. I studied media and engaged in media work not just for this one case. I will spend the rest of my life clearing the names of all those who have been wronged. This live stream added the final straw to the downfall of the Zhu family from the very beginning. The way they made their fortune wasn't clean now, with the strict investigation going on. They just happened to be in the line of fire. All along, it wasn't me who supported them, it was my good half-brother, Susan said. He was a kind and weak woman and really liked my father because of this. She hadn't been able to move on for so many years. When she was dying, lying in bed, she held my hand and asked me not to blame Joseph. She said, but your brother wasn't the biological child of the Zhu family and must have had a hard time there. She didn't know that all these years, Joseph had been winning favor in front of Zhu Jing by belittling and humiliating her and gradually establishing his position in the entire Zhu family. Just say thank you to her for bringing you into this world, otherwise I would have died in the summer 5 years ago when I was at the lowest point of my life. When everything finally settled down, I successfully became a full-time employee and even got a small promotion. I started to independently handle interview tasks this time. It was about a high school girl who had been bullied on campus by wealthy students for a whole year and then jumped off the school rooftop. I took the documents. Coincidentally, I'm working on a planning proposal for an advocacy campaign on the theme of this bullying. I'll send it to you for review this afternoon. Rarely, Susan is now wealthy and powerful with her support. Of course, I'll make use of it this interview, along with the subsequent anti-bullying publicity campaign I planned. Kept me busy for almost half a month, and I hardly met Susan. She sent me 20 messages, and I only had time to reply with an emoji while biting into a piece of bread and checking the public opinion. That night, she said she had prepared a surprise for me and asked me to go home for sure. There's news from a small mountain village. She walked in the mountains for a whole night before reaching the internet CIF in the town to contact me. That place is quite backward, and the local forces are deeply intertwined. That's probably not easy to get involved, so I'll stay there for a longer time. He sat up suddenly. There will be danger. Then so be it, I said indifferently, turned over and sat up, and poured her a glass of water, seeing her staring at me intently. I soothed her a few words. I'll try my best to protect myself, but this kind of thing is exactly the mission and responsibility of us media workers. Susan was silent for a moment and then suddenly said, I'll go with you, but you have a very important contract to negotiate next week. Don't you? It can be postponed. Why? Actually, it's not necessary. I tried to reason with her. A kiss went all the way down and stopped at my neck. She breathed softly. Because I'm your most loyal guard, you just go ahead and pursue your ideals, and I'll escort you.